McLaren have taken control of the 2025 season, but the real battle is just beginning. 9 races into the season, and McLaren have firmly stamped their authority. With 7 wins out of 9, they've been the standout team by a mile. Only Suzuka broke their rhythm, a weekend defined by Verstappen magic, and in Imola, by Oscar Piastri's own admission, had he defended better on the opening lap, McLaren could realistically have taken 8 out of 9. This level of dominance echoes Red Bull's start to the 2024 season. But unlike last year, where teams developed competitively all the way through, the narrative in 2025 feels different. With new regulations arriving in 2026, teams like Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari are soon going to face a critical decision: keep chasing McLaren or cut their losses and shift focus to the massive reset coming in just over a year. And make no mistake, McLaren are already reaping the rewards of a philosophy they've long held. Get the 2 best drivers you can find and let them race. That approach has already all but secured them the Constructors' Championship, with more than double the points of their nearest rivals. Ferrari, in second, sit a massive 197 points behind. But the Drivers' Championship? That's a much more intriguing story. When 2 drivers in the same team are fighting for the title in the best car on the grid, they'll score big points together. But they'll also take points off each other. And that dynamic opens the door for others to sneak through. Right now, just 10 points separate Piastri and Norris. That's nothing. 1 bad weekend, 1 DNF from a mechanical failure or crash, and the entire momentum of the championship could swing dramatically. Behind them, Russell and Verstappen have shown flashes of brilliance, but the consistency isn't there. Mercedes were invisible in Monaco, Verstappen dropped key points in Spain. As it stands, Max trails Oscar by 49 points. Not an impossible gap, but a tough one. You'd be foolish to ever count out a driver of Max's caliber, but the strategic reality is unavoidable. Red Bull's 2026 project, with their first in-house power unit, is a monumental task. Do they have the resources to pull off a season-transforming upgrade that not only closes the gap to McLaren, but allows them to outdevelop them all the way to the end of the year? Highly unlikely. That puts McLaren in a position both privileged and precarious, a modern-day Mercedes scenario. Like the Lewis versus Nico battles of the past, they now face the difficult question: how do you manage 2 title contenders within your own garage? Because as the pressure ramps up, so too does the risk of internal conflict. And if they're not careful, the biggest threat to McLaren might come from within. The comparison to Lewis and Nico isn't just convenient, it's crucial, because we've seen what happens when a title battle between teammates becomes personal. That relationship at Mercedes started strong, but once championships were on the line, it unraveled spectacularly. And when it didn't just divide the drivers, it fractured the team from the inside. McLaren are very aware of this. That's why Zak Brown and Andrea Stella have spent the last 2 years building something different. A culture of unity. One that puts the team first, even in the heat of competition. And to their credit, it's working. Both Oscar and Lando have consistently reinforced that message. When they speak, they echo the same sentiment. We're racing for McLaren first and foremost. Yes, we want to beat each other, but not at the expense of the team. They're free to race, free to fight, but they know the priority is McLaren, the badge they represent. And creating that mindset didn't happen overnight. It began back in 2023 when the team was still scrapping in the midfield. That was the foundation. Then came the real tests. Hungary, Brazil, Qatar. Moments of tension, moments where things could have boiled over. But they didn't. Because the trust was already there. And preserving that trust is absolutely vital, especially now when the stakes are higher than ever. Because the moment that trust begins to erode, the consequences are brutal. The media starts circling, the pressure increases, and instead of focusing on beating other teams, the drivers become obsessed with beating each other. That's exactly what happened at Mercedes. Lewis and Nico weren't just rivals, they had years of emotional baggage from karting days. And by 2014, when they were finally fighting for championships, the relationship fell apart almost instantly. There were on-track collisions, off-track manipulation, even moments where they betrayed team orders. Nico using banned engine modes, deliberately ruining Lewis's qualifying lap in Monaco. That wasn't just gamesmanship, it destroyed the trust between the drivers. And once that happened, the fractures spread. As Nico himself later admitted, the secrecy and the paranoia seeped into the garage. Mechanics and engineers took sides, factions formed. The tension was constant. Yes, it was spectacular for fans. Headlines, controversy, drama. But inside that garage, it was toxic, and the results began to suffer because of it. McLaren knows this history well, and that's why in 2025, with two drivers capable of fighting for a title, how they manage this relationship may well define their season. Because they're not just racing Red Bull or Mercedes anymore, they're racing the pressure that comes with winning. And that's the hardest battle of all. McLaren are winning now, but holding it together may be their greatest test. Back in 2016, Toto Wolff made a drastic move. As tensions between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg hit boiling point, he made the decision to swap their mechanics, forcing each driver to work with the other's crew. The idea was simple: rebuild trust by breaking down the factions. But the result? Nico Rosberg would later describe Lewis's old mechanics, now on his side of the garage, as enemies. That one word tells you everything about how toxic things had become at Mercedes. And it's exactly what McLaren are desperate to avoid. Because they're not just chasing a championship double in 2025, they're trying to build something sustainable, something that lasts. Zak Brown and Andrea Stella don't just want to win now, they want to keep both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri together for the next 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. But the truth is this: every team that's tried this before, two number one caliber drivers, equal footing, full trust, has watched it fall apart eventually. McLaren may have laid the groundwork for harmony. They may have instilled the right values, but so far, the true test hasn't come. Not yet. Last season gave us glimpses of tension. Hungary, where Lando hesitated on whether to hand the place back to Oscar. Monza, where Oscar, knowing full well that Lando was still chasing the title, dived down the inside on lap 1 anyway. But those weren't high-stakes moments. Oscar wasn't in the title fight. Lando, impressive as he was still an underdog to Verstappen. This year, it's different. Both drivers are in the fight. Both have tasted victory. And if the points gap stays narrow into the final stretch of the season, the pressure is going to become unbearable. The kind of pressure that forces drivers to choose between being a team player or seizing their one shot at greatness. And that's where things get complicated. Because just like fans and pundits, drivers know the future isn't guaranteed. People look at McLaren now and assume this level of performance will naturally continue into 2026 and beyond. But nothing in Formula One is ever guaranteed. Regulation changes level the field. Power unit shifts shake the hierarchy. McLaren are well positioned for the new era, with a promising works engine and a world-class technical structure. But just ask Mercedes how quickly things can slip. Since the 2021 Abu Dhabi heartbreak, they've only won as many races total as Oscar Piastri has in the first 9 rounds of 2025. And that reality won't be lost on the drivers. Because when you're fighting at the front, it's impossible not to think, what if this is my only chance? That fear, that this is the moment, and so yes, McLaren are thriving. Yes, the culture looks strong, but as the stakes rise and the trophies draw nearer, holding this thing together might just be the hardest challenge of all. The calm before the storm at McLaren. As we head deeper into the season, the pressure only increases, and with it, so does the temptation to prioritize yourself over the team. Right now, both Lando and Oscar are doing exactly what McLaren asks of them. They're racing hard, but respectfully, showing restraint, especially when compared to how aggressively Oscar raced Verstappen back in Jeddah. The trust between them and the positive team environment that Zak Brown and Andrea Stella have cultivated is clearly working. But let's be honest, when you're in the car and the World Championship is on the line and the number of races left is shrinking fast, everything changes. Determination turns into desperation. Respect starts to bend under pressure, and at some point, instincts take over. That's when we'll truly find out what a title means to these drivers and just how far they're willing to go to win it. Because here's the harsh truth. Every world champion in F1 has, at some point, been selfish. That may not be easy for fans to accept, especially those who idolize their favorite drivers as morally perfect heroes. But the nature of this sport demands it. Formula One is a strange hybrid. On paper, it's a team sport, but in reality, it's a battle of individuals enabled by a team, but ultimately driven by one goal: beating everyone else, including your teammate. And in the paddock, most drivers will tell you, your teammate is your most important rival. Zak Brown understands this, and to his credit, he's been incredibly open about it. In an interview earlier this season, he said, "Our drivers are free to race, even if that means at some point they're going to crash." He knows it's not a matter of if something controversial happens, it's a matter of when. And by being honest about it, he's not just managing expectations, he's preemptively diffusing the drama that's bound to explode at some point. Because unlike Mercedes in the Lewis-Nico era, McLaren isn't trying to control everything. They're letting their drivers fight, but they're building a structure to withstand the impact when things go wrong. And make no mistake, it will go wrong. Eventually. As for Lando and Oscar, this title fight becomes even more fascinating when you consider how different they are. Different personalities, different backgrounds, different stages of their careers. Right now, Oscar has the momentum. 5 wins to Lando's 2, a slim lead in the standings, and more importantly, a sense of calm that only comes when you have nothing to lose. But the pressure? That's on Lando. He's been at McLaren for 7 years. He's seen the team rise from the midfield to the top. And now, here's Oscar, who won a sprint race as a rookie, multiple Grand Prix in his second year, and now has a real shot at the title in just his third. If Oscar does win the championship this year, it could place Lando in a very difficult position going forward, especially in the eyes of the team. Zak Brown will publicly say that McLaren don't have a number 1 driver. But in Formula One, the number 1 driver always reveals themselves, not by contract, but by performance. And the signs are already there. Oscar recently signed a long-term extension until 2028, one of the longest on the grid, alongside Max Verstappen. That's a massive vote of confidence from McLaren. Meanwhile, Lando's contract ends in 2026, and he's yet to commit to a new deal. So make no mistake, the outcome of this championship fight could have huge implications, not just for McLaren, but for the entire driver market, especially if someone like Max or George makes a move in the coming years. So while McLaren are winning now, the real story is only just beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.